security stay the same? And would there be additional new taxes other than the property tax?
Assessments would continue if there was a city. Property taxes would increase. The fire department would still be voluntary. Security would stay the same. And there would be no new taxes other than the property tax.
Have we had tort liability issues in the past?
The answer to that is yes, but not nearly as much as you might think. There was a fairly large case a number of years ago. I don't know, I don't have any information on what the cost was, and there was a relatively small one just recently.
There is no problem getting alcohol here now. What is the value of being able to control liquor licenses?
The community club sells liquor under a resort license. A city potentially could attract new non-club restaurant business that could serve liquor by the drink. And established restaurants, like the two restaurants in the Village Green, Manny and Isabella's, Red's, and the filling station, would be able to sell liquor.
How many businesses would leave the area if there was an incorporation?
The committee believes that would be minimal. In fact, we don't believe there'd be any, but we'll allow a little margin of error there.
Has the Tennessee Civil Justice Act been upheld in court?
We don't know that it has, but a law, when passed by the legislature and signed by the governor, is presumed to be valid. And most statutes are never challenged in an appellate court. And if they are, the appellate court starts with the presumption that the law is valid. So we don't see this as an issue.
What do we mean by a referendum on liquor by the glass?
Cities have a process that they have to go through to put the question on the ballot, and then registered voters vote for or against it.
Could Crab Orchard give up its right to protest our incorporation?
Crab Orchard doesn't have that right. So they can't give up something they don't have. But as you'll find in the report, there are some hurdles to incorporation, and one of them is that we would need legislative assistance to incorporate the areas that we are proposing.
The PGA discussion is vague. Can we clarify it?
I don't know if we can clarify it, but we'll try. Sue Brown asked me if I wanted to use one of those pointers, electronic or... she apparently appreciates my technological ability and got me a dowel. As I mentioned before, this red area, which is...
Could you stand on the other side, Phil? Thank you.
Sure will. If I block you, I'll go in the hall. This red area is the PGA, and it is also Fairfield Glade. That's the boundary of Fairfield Glade. This little area here and this little area here are in the PGA expansion. For an area to become a city,
Oh, you went over there.
Are we giving up? Oh, now it's working when you came over.
It's me.
Oh, it's you. Good. To become a city, you have to be in a PGA. So we meet that criterion. We are in a PGA. This part is not in the PGA. It's in the expansion area. And the main reason that we propose that be included is because that's where the businesses are, and hopefully will be, that pay collect sales tax, and the city becomes a recipient of that, and so it's without that, some of the benefits of becoming a municipality go away. I mean, that's a big financial consideration.
We'll get to that. We'll get to that. We'll get to that in a minute. Just hold on.
I might just, well, I'll come back to this after a bit.
When will all required services be provided?
There is a requirement in becoming a city that they must specify which, if any, services they will provide from a list that includes police, fire, water, sewer, trash, roads, parks, and zoning. But there is no requirement that a city provide any services. And indeed, we're aware of one city in the state of Tennessee that does nothing but mow the roadsides. And before we go on, another member of the state has arrived, Fred Laufenberg. He's been teaching third graders today, so it's a valid excuse.
Ready? To achieve incorporation, would it take a referendum vote from registered voters in the county in the next election?
At some time, there would have to be an election, but only residents in the area proposed for incorporation may vote, not the whole county, and it won't be in the next election.
Why would Wyndham have to agree to a modification of the covenants and restrictions?
The covenants and restrictions are contained in a document that each of you got when you moved here? How many of you read it? That's more than I would have guessed. I'm impressed. Article 14, Section 4B provides that no amendment which materially or adversely affects any right, power, privilege, burden, obligation, or liability of the developer shall be deemed to be effective without the developer's prior written consent.
Would our present post office become an official post office?
As many of you know, the post office is going through changes, and they're trying to reduce costs and so on. Currently, our post office is what is called a contract office. The community club and the post office are the parties to that contract. Ultimately, we have no influence over whether the post office would remain. Yet, the post office will make that decision.
Can residences and businesses on Peavine be brought into a city without their vote?
They cannot. They get a vote, and if this goes forward, they'll have it.
If amenities stay with the club, could low-cost loans and grants be provided to the club for infrastructure upgrades?
What number are you on?
42.
The answer to the question is no. An area, a geographical area, has to be incorporated as a municipality to take advantage of the various benefits that flow to a city.
Where would first-year revenue come from?
Property taxes are collected, and state shared taxes are available, but there is a lag time. So most or all would not likely be distributed until year 2. But under our proposal, there would be little or no expense in the first year of any kind. And just an additional thought, if necessary, municipalities have ways to fund operations such as tax anticipation loans.
Would second-year revenue cover the budget?
The answer is yes. This repeats some of the numbers we've gone over before, but we would collect approximately $1.5 million. We'd take the cost of trash out of that at around $380,000. Money earmarked for roads at $181,000, and the net income would be about $970,000.
How would the club and a city get along?
With regard to trash collection, we don't see much of a conflict between the city and the community club. And as I mentioned earlier, our recommendation is that the city contract trash collection with the community club, which would leave the community club in charge of trash. However, we recognize that as a legitimate concern, particularly if the city were ever to expand its services. And we are recommending to the board that if anything goes further, that be given some study, and that we try to come up with a solution to the potential problem.
Will the loss of non-resident dues be fixed by incorporating?
No.
How would incorporation define a city's role in county decision-making?
I'll give you an example, and it goes back to the map. That map represents an amended growth plan. The participants in arriving at that map were Crossville, Crab Orchard, Pleasant Hill, and Cumberland County. We were represented by our 2 votes on the county commission. But if we had been a city, like Crab Orchard and Crossville, we would have had our own seat at the table in the planning of this whole growth plan. And of course, that's an ongoing effort. I mean, these things get revisited with some frequency.
Are there benefits to participating in the state municipal league?
There are. Low-cost expertise on municipal matters, lobbying, grants, building design, that sort of thing.
How do timeshare owners play into incorporation? Would they pay property tax and see benefits?
They would pay property tax. As for benefits, they would receive the same benefits as other residents.
Will public safety be eliminated?
No.
Will the county continue to pave the roads?
No. The city would be responsible for roads. And of course, the city could contract with the county to do that. A portion of the state shared taxes is earmarked for roads and has to be spent on roads. And so there is a source of funds for that type of endeavor. And the club now spends, the community club now spends approximately $500,000 on road maintenance, which they could continue to do, and in conjunction with the city, I think provide adequate roads.
What are the statutory implications to our wastewater treatment plant if incorporation occurs and with the existing public utility district?
The club would continue to own the wastewater treatment plant, which operates under a permit issued by the state.
Does the club have to give up control of the wastewater treatment plant?
No.
How would incorporation and the relationship with the wastewater treatment plant affect the developer or Wyndham? Is that correct?
Yes. We don't think it has any impact at all.
What is the difference in the cost of borrowing for a city and the cost of borrowing for the club?
The club is paying 3.9% on its most recent loan, which is down from about 6.5 something in previous loans, and I think we still have some outstanding loans at that figure, at the higher figure. The city could certainly sell bonds for under the 3.9, and in fact, we just learned of a similar-sized community in Wisconsin that got a 1.3% loan for a new sewer project.
Why would the southeast and southwest portions of the Glade Why include the southeast and southwest portions of the glade in incorporation?
As we said earlier, we think it should be everybody in, or we don't do it. I don't know, we couldn't determine how you would leave some people out and explain to them that they were out and some other people were in. It just, we don't see that working.
Would timeshare owners be entitled to sign an incorporation petition?
No, only registered voters in the area that is proposed for incorporation. And I think maybe you missed one up above.
The southeast and southwest portions?
Next.
Oh, sorry. Would business and property owners in a new city be included in voting?
Yes. Registered voters in the entire area to be incorporated are eligible to vote.
Would timeshare, well, we just did that one, timeshare owners. Did you want to answer that?
I did.
Oh, sorry. Okay. Is all of the prior work, except for tort reform, still relevant?
We think it is. Again, I mentioned that some of the numbers in prior reports are probably a bit out of date, but again, under our proposal, those numbers are irrelevant.
Does the assurance of voluntary compliance impact incorporation?
No.
Is it correct that the committee is recommending that an incorporated municipality be established with the club remaining an autonomous entity?
Yes.
Would members be faced with the possibility of taxes increasing overall monthly expenses?
Yes, that is possible. And we know, with regard to property tax, that members with higher value properties would pay more in tax than would be offset by the reduction in the price of trash collection.
How can city revenue streams flow into the club's coffers?
They don't flow. They don't flow into the club's coffers. Do flow to the benefit of the club's members and city residents.
Since the committee deferred to the board the process of educating members, will the committee be putting together another presentation to the members?
That is entirely up to the board. And in any case, I don't know that this committee will be doing anything more.
Would the club have any function in governing the city?
No.
What would be the time frame for the governing body to be elected?
Depending on the form of government, municipal officials of some sort would be elected within 62 days of a successful incorporation election.
What would be the status of property owners outside Fairfield Glade in relation to the club?
They would not be members of the club any more than they are today. They would be members of a city, but the only way you become a member of this club is to buy property here.
What would be the proposed reduction in assessments?
Under this proposal, there would be no trash fee for residents.
What is the impact on timeshare owners?
We think that's minimal because virtually everything stays the same.
Who approved the legal fees to draft the incorporation papers?
No papers were drafted.
And can the city require all city residents to become members of the club?
No, only residents within the club's boundaries are members. I think we did that one, didn't we?
Mm-mm.
Okay.
Mm-mm. And the last question, is there such a thing as hostile annexation?
The answer to that is a qualified yes, under very unusual circumstances. Within a city's urban growth boundary, that's a different term than we've been using, a city can annex without the approval of the residents. And I'm going to show you that in a second. Outside of the urban growth boundary, annexation has to be by referendum so that the affected residents get a vote, and the vote has to be favorable. This light blue, this light blue is Crossville's current urban growth boundary. So they can't do anything in a hostile way beyond that. They could theoretically annex beyond that, but that would require the approval of the residents in that area. Furthermore, they are, in terms of expanding, constrained by some of the same things we are. They're within 3 miles of us, just like we're within 3 miles of them. So I think the answer to the question is that and I think the intent of the question is whether we're under a threat by Crossville. And I think the answer to that today is no. Now, if that urban growth boundary changed, that could have an impact. But again, there are other hurdles they'd have to get over to do that. In addition to the questions that we have answered, there were a number of questions that we have not answered. And that is because the questions required answers that actually took us beyond the resources and time available to this committee. And I'll give you some examples of the types of questions. There were questions regarding structure, city manager versus mayor, whether there would be precincts, salaries and benefits of city employees, departments of finance, human resources, purchasing, tourism, how much is available in grants and who would write the grants, where will the mayor's office and the city hall be located? We got that question a lot. There were questions on the city charter and whether and how it can be repealed or amended. The process to expand municipal services. Resident input to operating and capital spending. These are all legitimate questions, but they are beyond where we are. Our recommendation to the board is that the community club remain as it is.